beautiful day in the neighborhood. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Would you be my neighbor? Hi, neighbor. It's another cold day in the neighborhood. Sorry, I'm just getting on a few minutes late. Another homegoing for another longtime member of the True Bethel family, Sister Bray. Many people in the community would have known Sister Bray. She was a part of the Mount Ararat Church. Then she was a part of the Cedar Grove Missionary Baptist Church. And then she finally ended up here with the True Bethel Church, but every church she was in was blessed because of her presence. And so I want to say farewell to her. So we just finished those services. And as we prepare for next week, a whole nother round, unfortunately, I want to say my heart is going out to family young lady, 17 years old, who'll be funeralized from here next week. 17 years old. And then we had a 15-year-old that was shot. I think it was 4 teens, yep. 19-year-old young man. This is going in the wrong direction. And what I am happy to hear from our state folks, from the governor, is that they have formed a new task force for the trafficking of guns, how they're going from state to state. And I do believe that is better than doing nothing. Now, you know, people will all have their opinion of what should happen. Oh, Mark, guess what? Oh, I do have it. My phone. Oh. I forgot. So people will have their opinion of what should happen, but I think one of the things is the ease of just getting guns into hands of youth who we know that their brain development has not been completed, and they'll just pull the trigger without thinking. And many adults, obviously, because there's more adults dying from homicide than there are children. But the thing we have to be careful of is to not minimize it, is to not become numb, is to stop talking about it because my phone, you see that drives me crazy when it happens.
We were both doing it because I went out there.
Oh, you did it too? But I think if we don't talk about it, if we minimize it, if we get numb to it, that it will get worse. You have to acknowledge when not only are you burying children, but we're burying more females than probably in my entire 27 years of pastoring. I never remember burying this many females within, even though I just took a year span or 2-year span. And so now to be doing that, it hurts, I'm telling you, and not one of these services do I take for granted. Now, you know, everybody knows, Mark, can you give me that monitor there? I don't know why I need it because it's just me on it, but I can see when you go to a shot of you, you know. I know we all double dutying because wherever I'm at, Mark is at, and so we both go from council member to pastor to daddy to whatever else.
Whatever it takes to get the job done.
But I did watch the Board of Education. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up when I talk about homicides is because to me, there is nothing more important for our children than education, but not just ABCs, not just reading, writing, and as they used to say, arithmetic. We got to continue with some character development, and I'm going to tell you why. And I just said this in the funeral in celebration of life we just did. If I've never seen better, I don't know what better is. If I've never been exposed to better, I don't know what better is. And it's hard for me or for a young lady to be a good mother, heck, a good citizen. But if what we pay attention to, and this is social media and everywhere else, neighborhoods, we pay attention to negativity, to fighting, to who's going against who. And I've said it before, if we utilize this platform to educate one another, we'd be, I mean, the world would be ours. We'd be able to do whatever we want to, right? But when all I've seen is fighting, all I've seen is division, all I've seen is you better get even, all I've heard is cursing. You can go to school and you can learn reading, writing, and arithmetic, but it doesn't mean that you have the skills to make it, the skills to get a job, the skills. And I'm concerned. And so when I watch Veronica Ivy says they normalize their toxic and trauma. Yeah, and we got a lot of children who are traumatized, who have gone through trauma. Like, I'm not dogging anybody because you don't know what some of these young people have gone through. And that's why I think it's so important that we have to continue not only having the conversations, but doing the things that we need to do. Here's the tough part. You can have all kinds of programs. You can say, bring your kids here. But if already they are in a bad situation, no adult is going to get them there. No adult is going to take the time. And so I'm pleading with people who it may not be your child, but you need to be involved in somebody else's child's life as a help, not as a nosy busybody, as a help. I think about how many children come to True Bethel and they don't come with their parent, they're coming with somebody else. That's part of ministry.
Yep.
People want to pray for everybody, lay them out in the street and give them a Bible tract. But at the end of the day, part of your ministry might be reaching out to that young person whose parent may be struggling. And again, no disrespect at all, because tomorrow it could be me. Mm-hmm. But to reach out and to help, to reach out and, our children are going through a lot. Our children are going through a lot. And big ups to those who did, who are doing the right things with their children. But there are so many children out here that don't have the family structure or just support network that it takes to raise a child. And that becomes part of all of our responsibility. So when I watched the school board meeting, I watched the replay yesterday, and my goodness. So when I ran for the board years ago and was on the board, one of the reasons I ran is because I was concerned about education. Mm-hmm. We did a lot. We created student support, did a lot when we were there, still not enough. But one thing we had to finally learn is how to work together. I believe, and I have no proof of this, by the way, I'm just talking, but I told Monique this last night. I think there's going to be a leadership shift. I do believe it. Dr. Brown is already gone. From what I saw yesterday, is tough at the top.
Yeah.
And you have the fight over administrators getting more money, the fight over paying parents to bus their children, and it's exploding on so many levels. But I remind my colleagues in government that we got to get back down to the ground level.
Absolutely. Of
the education of our babies.
Absolutely. Because
they have suffered so much. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing like with the snow. When the snow, we know what happened in the storm and all the complaints. I didn't get on here and say, oh, it's the commissioner's fault. What did I say? Oh, we have to get together.
It's a we situation.
We have to get together, and we have to work on the problem. And I pray, I know I'm all over the place, and we don't get another storm no time soon because we still ain't cleaned out yet. But at the end of the day, I had to take responsibility, part of the responsibility. But I had to take the responsibility to work together. Now, I could get on the news all day long. I've been interviewed several times. I never got on there. It's their fault. The administration did that. No, okay, it happened. Now, let's look and try to make it better the best we can. The Board of Education and our school system is I'm not going to say only, the biggest hope for our children. It's the biggest hope for these, not just black and brown children, but also inner city children whose parents put our trust in you every day and pray and get involved. But you gotta keep the focus on the fact that every time we bury another young person, especially a young person who's shot by another young person, usually somewhere there is some trauma, there's something. And that's why when people were calling out for more mental health workers with the police, we have to say the same thing about our children. Like, it's not just about going to school. It's not just about did they get the grades, because some of them have so much trauma. And remember, they're going to be sitting in the classroom with your kid. If your kid is doing great, they're going to be sitting in the classroom with somebody going through trauma. And this is not just Buffalo Public Schools.
No.
Because I went to a private school, because my kid one of mine is in a private school. At the end of the day, they got trauma there too. But what I'm speaking of is this larger system that educates a majority of poor students. Mm-hmm. Poor students. Almost everybody is eligible for free lunch. Almost everybody. That's why the school board just decided years ago to say, give it to everybody. Let's stop doing this bring your income stuff.
Right.
Because there's so many. It's the minority who wouldn't qualify. So this is our biggest bite at the apple for our children, especially after 2 years of them being on remote learning.
And I'll just say this little piece, one of my biggest struggles is that I think everyone just thinks, we'll just keep throwing money at it.
Yeah.
Or we need an increase in funding. We need an increase in funding. We need an increase in funding. And I think right now, New York is one of the highest per dollar per student being spent. And so clearly it's not just a finance issue. Clearly,
right.
We got to, like you said, get down to the meat of the matter and understand where the gap is. We're in a situation right now, like you explained, none of us have been in. So
Yep.
all of us are frustrated.
Yep.
All of us want to come out of a pandemic. All of us are trying to figure out how do we fix these shortages. And part of the snow issue is because of shortage.
Yes.
So everyone is trying to figure out how do we solve this while trying to get out of a pandemic. So like you said, I think everyone has to eventually sit back, take the deep breath, and
Yes.
then be like, let's fix this not only for now but after we come out.
Yeah, we're in a, and I can't say this, I feel like we're in a crisis situation for our children.
Absolutely.
We're burying more of our children, and this is a crisis. Mm-hmm. And we can't take 3 years to figure this out.
No.
And it's going to take the school board working with whoever is the superintendent. And it's going to take the superintendent working with whoever is in the school board. Because at the end of the day, it's about these young children who will not have a chance. No. They won't have a chance. And it's not about the politics. It's not about any of that. We have got to get it together. Now, I know some will say, well, what is the council doing? I want to be clear. If I could do more, I'd do more. By law, the Board of Education is the one tasked. And even when we've tried to add money and earmark it to make sure, if the council, let me tell you what I would do if I could. Because I think there needs to be many more mental health workers in the schools. I would fight for funding from the city. Here's the problem, folks. The state law says we cannot earmark money. If we give it, they can use it for whatever.
Yep.
Even if we say, here, we'll give you another $200,000, $300,000 in the schools with the greatest poverty, schools with the most trauma, school, blah, blah, blah. Put the workers there, because this is more, it's hard to learn when you got to go home to a traumatic situation.
Yep.
It's hard to learn when your mother is being abused. It's hard to learn when you got family members on drugs. That needs some intervention, right? But the state law does not allow it. State law says, city, if you give the school system more money, and I'm all for it, I'm okay with it, they decide.
General fund.
That's what it is. Matter of fact, we had a real good conversation with an administrator, Tanika Shedrick, and others who are asking for access to pastors. And I'm setting up a meeting with her and hopefully with the Baptist Ministers Association and any other groups that will have them, because what they're basically saying is we need help. We need the help, and we'll be there as a resource, but we need the help. I'm frustrated myself because I need my children to get extra help, and I'm not going to name the place. I'm not going to name the place, but don't tell me this is the amount for the tutoring, and then when I get there, go, oh no, we gave you a wrong sheet, and want you to pay 20% interest.
Oh no.
20% interest. So they basically get all their money whether you come back or not up front.
Jeez.
And then I think the lowest interest rate was like 20%. You think I'm not frustrated? I got all this building here. There should be tutoring right here. My kids need it. They don't have an after school program right now.
No.
Matter of fact, we can barely get them home from school. My kid, I better check my phone. My kid getting out a half a day today. He's like, can you be on standby because our bus driver sometimes doesn't come when we got a half a day. And he has to sit in the classroom until one of us can break away and go get it. So now we have no after school stuff. After 2 years, and I'm not. Let me tell you this, folks. I ain't passing blame. I'm trying to bring knowledge so we can know how important. Because if I had a group that wanted to tutor here at True Bethel, I would give them space free of charge. I said it. I mean it. Our children need the tutoring. They need the help. I would give them this space free of charge. And I'll take it to another level. If there's an organization out there that's good at what you do, I promise you I can find funding so that you could pay your tutors. That's a promise. That's a promise.
And I would say it's a double-edged street, a two-sided street. So we can do all this, but we still need parents and guardians and whoever else to get the kids here.
Yeah.
So we can create the spaces. We just got to make sure that people know, like, okay, I'm coming, and not just we have a room full of tutors and then nobody shows up.
And Ashley Jones is on here, and she makes a good point. She said, "Why would you go to another place? You could have took to me." That's and she does have her own tutor.
Yes,
we got to get her on the show. I think we need to get her on the show again. I think she's been on for some of the drives she's done. But let's get her on the show and let's talk about her business and anybody else out there who has a credible tutoring business. Darius Pridgen, am promising you that if we could put together a program, that program could be located here for free. You get you a couple nights a week. You ain't gonna get Monday through Saturday, and then later on Sunday. But we work it out.
Right.
Because if they have a credible program, they're probably doing other days somewhere else.
Absolutely. I
want you here because when I heard the ridiculousness of what some of these places are charging, Naomi, see, this is why I love this. Naomi Suri, who was principal for Buffalo Public Schools, McKinley. She's retired now. Can you imagine a Naomi and Ashley, different rooms, different subject matters? Mount Olive has tutoring for youth Tuesday and Thursday, 4:30 to 6. Share this information, y'all. This is what I'm talking about. Tracy, is there a number or somebody they can contact? Put it up here, y'all. Let's do it.
And I will say this, because I forget where we were at or what program we were part of. and the student was talking about how, and just shout out to Mount Olive and their tutoring
Yeah.
program. They also have a scholarship program
For the students.
so there's actually someone at Mount Olive that will work with a high school student to go find scholarships and all of this kind of
beautiful.
stuff. So yeah, so they're doing it at Mount Olive. So
See,
shout out to them.
I love that. I love this. This is what these platforms should be about. Thank you, Mount Olive. Ashley's, I know she said Saturday tutoring is also more flexible. That's true. That's true. Much more flexible. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Come on, y'all. There needs to be universal reports, a strategic plan. Come on, Naomi. Come on. Come talk to me. Tracy says call the main office at Mount Olive. Folks, we have to concentrate on our children. Carol Lane, perhaps college students can volunteer. I saw Kamal had a comment way back somewhere. I'm going to find it.
I got it.
You got it?
Yep. Putting students and families first to ensure high academic achievement for all currently. Our children are not being educated to be able to read and write and do math at or above grade level.
And that word at or above, or above, that's what we should be shooting for. Above grade level. They are these students are about to have to compete globally.
Yep.
In a world where private school students have been in school.
Mm-hmm.
Private, so they're going to be the first picks of colleges.
Yeah.
And you could have the nicest child you want. If they cannot read, if they cannot write, if they cannot think, let me say this. If they cannot articulate, it's going to be a problem. Folks, I encourage you, and we use slang around my house. I promise you we do. But the more I hear it, the more I start to correct it. I don't want, I listen, to young people, and it's like, and it'd be like, and you got to correct, like, it may seem like such little. When I got hired to teach school for Buffalo Public Schools, when I got hired and I taught Spanish, I learned Spanish first, school, but then I lived in Panama. Mm-hmm. And so I learned the dialect of a Panamanian. And they, in almost every other sentence back then, they would say these words, "Tu sabe?" So they would say, "Tu sabe?" So they'd be in the middle of a sentence, and they say, "Tu sabe?" which means, you know what I mean, basically. You understand. Yep. When I went for my interview was in Spanish. Mm. As I'm going through, I'm thinking I'm doing wonderful, and I kept saying, "Tu sabe? Tu sabe?" And at the end, the director of the Spanish department says, "Can I ask you something?" And I was like, "See?" And he says, "Why do you keep saying tu sabe?" Because it's what I heard for the years I lived in Panama. So when I heard that, I always said that. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens with our young people is that they hear it. We don't correct it. We think it's kind of cute or, they got a little slang. They got a little groove with them, whatever.
Swag.
It's not. It's not when they're going to have to compete in a world, whether we like it or not. It's not okay. And then layer on top of it 2 years. Layer on top of it, no real testing to see where children are right now. That's
scary.
That's scary. That means we're getting ready to loose them into a world they're not prepared for.
And have no idea. What they know, where they place in the world, or forget the world, Western New York or the city.
Absolutely.
So it is scary. And to your point, when my kids were here this summer, and it was almost exactly like you said. I just was like, I hate the fact that they keep answering me, yeah.
Yep.
And so now, even when I'm on the phone with them, and they be like, "Yeah, Dad," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't understand that."
I do the same thing, Mark.
and it was just like you said, it was a flash. I'm like,
my kids have even start self-correcting themselves.
Yeah.
JJ said to me yesterday, I said something, and he said, "Yeah," and he's like, "I mean, yes, right away." And that's so important to me. I want, and Sam says right on point, above grade level. I want my children, and everybody should want this for their children. I want them to be able to operate in any area.
Any.
So I do understand knowing a little street language. You kind of got to know that, because if not, you're not gonna know what somebody's saying about you.
What's it called, Rayshawn? The switch. There's a term for the switch that you should be able to.
I know exactly what you're talking about, where you should be able to turn the switch,
Yes.
and that's the switch I want them to have, and that's not being phony, and that's not a sellout. That's a survivor. That's a survivor. At the end of the day, our children have to be able to survive, and it's not just about their grades. Sandra Scrutton, this wasn't even what we was going to talk about today.
But it's not even about just sports too. Like, oh, my kid's going to participate in sports to get us out. Like, trust me. Trust me.
Go ahead. You're a coach.
Code switching. Thanks, Janique.
Yep.
In the new role at Hilbert I'm now talking more to high school students from all across the country, actually. And I was in 2 conversations yesterday on Twitter with a couple of students, and I was like, I felt like I needed a Google next to me for acronyms and everything else. And I'm like, oh, wow. And like you said, it's not just a Buffalo thing. These kids weren't in Buffalo.
Yep.
So it's a generational thing. And like, we could end up, like you said, losing more than just our own city kids, but a generation.
Because if you want to talk about crime, and you want to talk about violence, and you want to talk about, they do what's called predictors.
Yes.
And they look at where children are educationally now and predict where they're going to end up. Well, let's take where our children are now, and anybody out there who wants to make a prediction, you can. It's going to be tough.
Yes.
And again, I'm going to say this. I'm not just talking about Buffalo Public Schools. No. I am also talking about private schools, and I'm talking about across the country, because we've got to see this as global. At the end of the day, if we don't get this education piece together, nobody's going to cover another homicide. They don't do it now. The reason I bring up the 17-year-old is because I always think it's important to recognize it, to say it, to feel the hurt, to feel the pain. I've got in my house teenagers. I'll have 2 teenagers in a minute. The last of the Mohicans. Let me back up. I'm sorry, you all. Eva Doyle. Sam said, Code Switch too. Greetings, Bishop. I have a scholarship every year named for my late. See, she's still giving back. She's still giving back after she's retired.
Yeah.
After she's gone through health battles, still giving back. It is 12 years old, and I never have enough students apply for the scholarship. See, this is what I'm talking about. But then on the flip side, you got Mount Olive saying, we'll help children to get scholarships.
Yep.
Man, big ups. Last year, I gave 5 scholarships to area students. People can contact me at the Criterion newspaper, columnist Eva M. Doyle. Go ahead, Mark.
And I was just going to say, and because I'm looking at what Sam just posted, our children are on the brink of being a permanent underclass as they fall further behind as everyone else moves along at a pace. And I think the scary thing is, because, I'm always into how we fall into this path of something. If you're behind now, if you graduate 12th grade, but you're reading at a 10th grade, doing math at 10th grade level, the financial pitfall that you fall into is now that I'm getting ready to go to college.
Yep.
And now I got to take all these 0-level courses.
Yes.
And I'm paying for those.
Yes.
And they give me no credits. And I could be in those for another 1 to 2 years,
Yes.
0-level courses, before I even start my 100 level. That's now putting me towards my degree. So now I'm paying for 2 extra years of school.
If I get to college.
If I get to college.
If I get to college. And that is if I get to college and don't have a bunch of babies and then have to drop out of college. It's a cycle. Yeah. And I'm not going to say nobody, because there's a lot of people out there talking about it. But we've got to do something about it, because at the end of the day, this is a cycle. And whether people like what I'm getting ready to say or not, there are people who enjoy the cycle because it means jobs for their children.
Absolutely.
And less competition. And if my child has all of the tools, all of the knowledge, has been to school every day, getting in college, that's less competition. Because everybody wasn't thrilled about affirmative action.
Nope.
Everybody is not thrilled about MWBE. We can have all the MWB requirements that you want, But if our children don't own any black businesses,
Yes, sir.
then let me tell you what happens. See, I'm trying to educate. Even the city of Buffalo has a requirement. You know, you get a contract. You have to have so many minority workers. Da, da, da. Do you know some people can waiver out if they can prove that they can't find anybody?
Yep.
Because you can't stop a project. You can't stop. Now, some of them, and we've gone after them. One was a paving company, and they ain't have none of it. They're supposed to have apprentice, and they didn't. So at the end of the day, we went after it. But what happens when a business right now is so hard to find people who want to work and are equipped? What happens when a business can't? Folks, they don't care about no MWBE goals. They go like, we tried. You got somebody? And the bad thing is a lot of times good workers are already working. So now you got folks who you got to try to train and all that. And these businesses are not training institutions. If you don't believe me, one of the airlines, and I was watching on World News last night, had to start training their own pilots from scratch, no experience, because there's not enough pilots not us. The pilots are right there on East Ferry and Jefferson and Coons and Fillmore, you name it. If they had the basics, but you can't fly a plane and not be able to do math. This is a crisis. And what usually, you know me, I try to get along, try to kumbaya, but I'm saying to the city of Buffalo, to every elected leader, to every pastor, to everybody who will hear, we all have to find our own place. We all have to find our own place. So, and then when somebody finds their own place, don't put everything on them. Well, why don't Mount Olive do more? No, let's celebrate what they're doing.
Absolutely.
If a church can do, maybe a church can't do tutoring, but they can do something else to help our young people. Because this, I think, and I've been saying it to sometimes deaf ears, and that's why I was so glad when Sam came along and the parents, because you know when I was on the school board, I felt like an island by myself, except for Florence Johnson, and Jan Peters was there. But at the end of the day, parents weren't coming and speaking at the mic. And this has to be, and I've said, no matter whether you're Republican or a Democrat, no matter whether you're a district council member or county, we all should be declaring public or education, let's just say education of our children, as the top priority in a crisis. Somebody asked on why could we put more money into mental health counseling. I explained that earlier. The Board of Education also got money because you're talking about the money. So they have a lot of money. We can't, the council can't, the city can't, because of what I explained about state law. If we handed them $1 million or $2 million, they don't have to use it for that. But they have money from the federal government. So that would be something. Naomi, and I'm just seeing her comment. This is an urgent crisis. High school students are not ready for the world. Many of them are not. Many of them are not. And I know the first thing somebody's going to say, where are the parents at? Folk, I'm a parent. And let me tell you this. My children are not in the street. My children are home every day, every night. I can't help my 12-year-old with his homework, with one of his subjects. It's not a skill. It's not a skill I know. I was impressed when his older brother helped him recently and really knew, no, Jaden, But every house doesn't have an older brother.
No.
So what would happen if I didn't have an older brother who was good in math? What would happen if I couldn't afford a tutor? We're sealing fate. And you brought up something earlier, Mark. I was about to call you Mike. About sports. Folks, you can think your child is going to get rich off of sports. The odds are, I'm talking about odds, they're not. Now, they may, But if they get a lot of money and they don't know how to control their money or count their money or know no business practices. One of the things that I always took in school was business.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think, and I don't know if it's a requirement, but it should be. Business. How do you run a business? How do you start a business? How do you maintain a business? Because many of our athletes get ripped off.
Yep, because somebody's waiting to count that money.
Somebody waiting to count it. So it's not just about can you play baseball, you're going to be a track star. That's all well and good. But you also need an education that goes along with it. Some of the most wealthy sports figures have different businesses.
Absolutely.
They ain't just going out and bands will make you down. No, they're not doing that. No, I ain't saying they're not doing that, but what I'm saying is they're putting their money into somewhere that's making them money.
I actually was listening to a sports commentator yesterday, and he's prominent. He's worked at ESPN, and he's currently on Fox Sports. And he said, you know what I realized on a plane the other week? And his co-host was like, what? He was like, the rich people, all they do is read.
They read much more.
He said all they do is read. He was like, and they read, and he said they read everything because it's all about making an informed decision for them. It has nothing to do. It has nothing to do.
What is he looking at me like?
No idea. So it's literally just so they can make informed decisions.
Yeah.
He was like, us down here on the ground level, we run. He said, but all they do, he said, when they're on the plane, they read.
Well, let me tell you how wild that is, and God knows I'm not there. But I used to listen. I love listening to gospel.
Yeah.
But I also love listening to neo soul.
Yes.
And I would listen to that. And I got this app now called Blinks. And basically they go through a book and they don't read line by line. They come up with the most important points. So it might be a whole book and they're going to blink 15 points.
Wow.
And you're listening, and it's the most interesting points of that book and the focus of that book. And they have tens of thousands of books from self-help. Yeah. And so now in my car when I'm by myself, I put on a blink. And then let's say I get out, it'll continue where it left off.
Right.
And you can rewind. I have found sermon materials on Blink because it would be the other day I was sitting in the car and it was a series I was working on. And first of all, what was weird and scary is that they start talking about somebody at the University of Buffalo. Now, these are books from all, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got that chill on me. But Mark, you bring up a very good point about reading. I was watching yesterday as Sharon Cotman, Honorable Sharon Cotman, was being interviewed about her proposal to give parents $50 to drive their children to school.
Saw
right?
That.
And the reporter asked her something about, well, has this happened in other places? And she kind of mentioned it. You know what I did? Went to researching and found that there are places across the country, but that comes from, like you said, reading. You got to read. And probably in my day, and I do most of it at home, I started out reading, end up reading. You make a good point, and now you're making me take that point home for my children. You're making me take it home. Because even working with my children and stuff like book reports and all that kind of stuff, I just felt like they had it until I reviewed it. And I was like, oh, right? Every child doesn't have that, and that's my fear. And if you've never lived in poverty, you don't know about poverty. And I'm not about to sit here and act like, I can't apologize that both of my parents, they only have one kid.
Right.
And they both worked. I can't apologize for that. That's the responsible thing to do. Right? They didn't have a lot of kids. So I can't tell you that I know poverty like some people, but I can definitely tell you I don't know what wealth is. Like, hey, I grew up on Winslow. We had one car. We lived in a flat. Now you put that a two-story. You put that against somebody who has lived in Clarence Center all of their life with a maid When I thought we were middle class, you know what my father told me? You better get that out of your head. We poor.
Well, I think that generation is the last one where you did have what economics consider the three classes,
Right.
Upper, middle, and low. Now it's really just
Upper and low.
It's really the 1%ers, and then a low, middle, and then low.
But we have to be conscious
Yeah.
that if you don't know something, learn it. If you
Absolutely.
don't know that children are, I mean, I get my taste of it now from what I do as a pastor and as a council member, and just as living right there. At the end of the day, there are people struggling,
Yep.
and we can do all that. Where is the parent stuff? All we want to. Sometimes the uncle got to be the parent. At the end of the day, sometimes the neighbor got to kick in. At the end of the day, sometimes it's the grandparents that have to kick in in order to help raise a child. Because at the end of the day, if we don't get this education right, that little cute child is going to be the one to rob you because
Right.
he's got to survive. When marijuana legislation comes out, whether you agree with it or not, it is tailored so that those who were being arrested for selling drugs can have a real business. But if you can't count and you can't maintain a business, selling marijuana legally ain't even gonna do nothing because you can go out and open up a regular store right now. And it ain't us who opening up the stores. It's not us, and I'm not blaming nobody, and definitely not talking about no single ethnicity. I'm saying at the end of the day, when you look at the businesses in our community, or in the city, not many are owned by us. That's why I give big ups to anybody, especially children of color, especially people who came up in public school, especially people who had the rough side of the mountain who are opening businesses.
Absolutely.
Now, the one who really gives a shout out is Monique. Monique will buy stuff from every black business in Buffalo. Where'd you get that hair pick? Yeah, well, such and such was selling it. If it's being sold by a black person, my wife is buying it. Do you hear me? This is a lot, folks.
Yeah.
This is a lot. And I'm sounding the alarm. I'm sounding the alarm that the greatest thing, when I first, and some will remember this, when I first got elected, I said we needed a government for the people task force, which basically meant let's find one thing we can agree on. And all levels of government work together collaboratively to take care of that problem. Invited elected officials, a handful showed up. Thank God for Louise Slaughter, rest her soul. Because I asked her to invite more, showed up. We agreed we'd work on it, and then what do you think happened? Everybody went into their silos.
Yep.
COVID has we already had a crisis. Let's not pretend we didn't have a crisis. But COVID has magnified this crisis.
Yes.
And it will not happen with the Board of Education alone. It is going to take the Board of Education. It is going to take parents. It is going to take teachers. It is going to take city councils. It is going to take the county. It is going to take the state, and it's going to take the federal government to recognize. I got it about Ukraine. And by the way, I'm praying for the people of Ukraine. I got it. But our domestic policy, what we do at home, has to be as important as our foreign policy.
I agree.
And I love Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm.
But he ain't do too great at this either. As far as making education so important, we found, Lord have mercy, billions of dollars to give to businesses, which we should have.
Yep.
When businesses were failing.
Multiple times.
We found billions of dollars to give to banks when banks were failing.
Mm-hmm.
Billions of dollars to give to the car industry. That same energy must start at the White House. We need our vice president, woman of color, to have a platform that deals with education and back it up with the money that we're able to find. Because let's remember, the bailout of businesses, which I agree with, black and brown people don't own the majority of businesses.
Nope.
So when there's a bailout for just one segment of our community, basically, and then they send you a stimulus check, I got it, and I'm glad. I'm glad about that. But the same energy has to be there for the education of our children. And the same way the government can come down and shut down a charter school and say, we just going to shut you down, has to be the same way that our state government does for any school system that's not working. Not working, shut it down. Figure out a way. But don't shut it down until you got a better path. Because our children are suffering enough. And I'm on this radio, so I can't say, and I know I'm not as saved as some of y'all, but there's some words coming up in my spirit, in my soul. I'm sorry, not in my spirit. It's coming up in my soul. And I'm trying not to lead with soul. I'm trying to lead by spirit, by my connection with God.
And I know the White House is in a struggle, but I know everyone is fighting for the forgiveness of student loans. Mm-hmm. I am not a proponent of just the forgiveness. I would rather them say every student or those who want to attend college or a trade school, we're giving you the $10,000. Mm-hmm. Give the 10, like, don't just
so that they can go to school,
so that you can actually go to school. Don't just forgive it so it's off my debt, and then then if I still want to go back to school, I got to get more debt. Just give me the $10,000 to go to school.
But that's progressive thinking,
right?
That's thinking, how do we get people out of poverty?
Absolutely.
That's thinking, how do we keep them out of caskets?
Yes.
But if I have never had to bury multiple children, and I live in a place that does not know poverty, not only physically, but in my head, then those type of decisions don't get made. And a great majority of our decision makers in Washington are very wealthy people.
Very.
Net worths of millions. So their ideology is keep business alive. Mm-hmm. My ideology is keep people alive, and not just keep them alive, but what do we do so that they can strive?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And unless that is on all levels, unless there's a call for that on all levels, then at the end of the day, I think Sam said it on here, that we have that they're creating a generation of underclass, and that's what some people want.
Absolutely.
When we talk about gentrification and, they're going to move us out of our neighborhoods, if we had the means, that would not happen because we would own them. I looked at, somebody said, did you send me the study yesterday, and you could look by district, or did you?
Somebody else council member.
All right. I looked at how many renters we have in Ellicott. The majority of people in Ellicott are renters. And you can look at different places, and I'm not going to call out anybody else's district. That means a majority of my constituents do not own where they're living.
Yes.
And many of them, it has been generational where they have rented. And there has been no drive, no desire to own. And I ain't dogging that, because some people, they don't want to own. They don't want to be bothered. But there's a difference when you have that choice to make.
Absolutely.
That I would just rather live where I'm living and y'all take care of the grass, than when you have to live in substandard households. Like I was on the news yesterday, woman. You saw that?
Oh, that was terrible.
How you gonna have her in this house? Was it no water in there? No heat?
No heat for weeks, and then she had to wait for weeks for like the furnace pipe or whatever hot water pipe busted. Like that's just terrible.
At the end of the day,
still probably charging $1,000 and up.
It was, I believe, And at the end of the day, that's why we need some type of rights for tenants, because to me, that landlord should have been brought into court after they ain't have heat for a week. Come on. You should have had to put her up in a hotel somewhere. You should have had to provide some type of heat that wouldn't have brought, now here is the problem, that wouldn't have brought her electric bill up because you bring her, because I saw that the other week. The landlord brings over like 5-7 space heaters. People got to go from one room to the another, and then they're the one who have to pay the electric bill. You got to get somebody over there to fix it. When I owned property, I had to get somebody over there to fix it. I understand that you might not be able to get somebody 1 day or 2 days, but if you own property, you got to fix it. They're paying crazy rent out here and have very little rights. And then you got people say, well, they don't need any more rights because they're not paying rent. I'm talking about for bad landlords to take care of their house. I'm all with you. I'm supporting you. But at the end of the day, you got children here. What's the consequences? It's got to be quick, got to be swift. Can't leave kids in the cold. We got Tina Sanders says NMT has always been working with the youth, and one of our things where we have to start at the root issues. Absolutely. I got a lot of comments. Monique
I was ready to say, I don't even know where you was.
Right. That is why this isn't being treated like a crisis. Yeah. So, folks, I've said enough. I've said more than what I intended to say today, but I'm working on these issues as hard as I can. I need tutoring here. I need tutoring at True Bethel. I need tutoring in, and it's not Ellicott District thing. I need tutoring in Ellicott District. Big ups, and I'm glad you all shared different places that were doing tutoring on this platform. If we did more of this, if we did more real solution-based conversations, we wouldn't be in the shape we're in. If you got a platform, use your platform for positive. If you got a platform, help somebody else. You got a platform, pass on the information. It's not just about sharing somebody else's joke about somebody, because the joke is on us. I'm going to throw it back over to the station. Thank you, Hobson's, the Dr. Dry Cleaning, 874 East Delavan. You get this information because of Hobson. And you get this information because of Brian K. Lewis Funeral Home. 3 locations to serve you in your hour of need. Get ready to play their commercial over. I'm sending it back over to you, Lee. Until next week, power to the people.